Linda, did our baby get born while I was on my trip? Steve's tone was infuriatingly nonchalant. Yes, the baby was born, I replied, my voice steady but heart-pounding. I want to speak to my wife directly, he insisted. Your wife, Emily, has passed away. What? You're kidding, right? Come to the funeral now. Ignoring his stunned silence, I added under my breath, all of this is your fault. You will pay for this, and hung up. With shaking hands, I placed the phone down. Emily's lifeless body lay before me. My sweet daughter, only 30, taken too soon. I leaned over her, stroking her cold forehead as memories of her final days flashed vividly in my mind. The guilt and anger burned through me. That fateful night had begun so normally. A mundane dinner followed by the usual phone call. Emily sounded exhausted. Her pregnancy had been rough. Steve's neglect didn't help. His trips were an excuse to avoid responsibility. Her voice was shaky. Mom, I don't feel good. The contractions, they're early. I dropped everything, fumbling for my keys. George wasn't home yet, stuck in a meeting. I cursed the traffic, my heart drumming against the steering wheel. By the time I reached Emily's house, she was barely conscious, the pain overwhelming her. We rushed to the hospital, my hands clenched around hers, whispering reassurances. I wasn't sure I believed myself. In those moments, Emily's strength, her grace, stood out. She brought her child into the world with determination, even as her health deteriorated rapidly. When she held her baby for the first time, her worried eyes spoke volumes about her fears, about Steve. Mom, she had whispered weakly, I need you to do something for me. What is it, sweetheart? Divorce papers. They're in the bottom drawer, under the old letters. I can't stay with him. Promise me, Mom. I nodded, my throat tight. I couldn't let her down. The next few days were a blur of hospital beds and whispered prayers. As the baby slept in my arms, I noticed the bruises on Emily's body. They were faint but unmistakable. Steve's anger had marked her, his love twisted into something poison. The phone rang again, jolting me back to the present. It was George. Linda, how are you holding up? Not good, George. Not good at all. We need to bury Emily, and I want Steve to see what he's done. We'll get through this, he reassured me softly. Together. Hanging up, I wiped my tears, leaning closer to Emily. Your suffering won't be in vain. I promise. As I cradled the newborn, she stirred slightly. I held her tight, feeling Emily's strength within this tiny life. Steve and Susan would face the consequences. Emily's story wouldn't end in tragedy. It would be the beginning of justice. With steely resolve, I prepared for the coming storm. Mom, I'm scared. Emily's voice trembled through the phone. It was early afternoon, and she was alone in their empty house. She was due in 2 weeks, but her contractions had started. I gripped the steering wheel, navigating through the bumper-to-bumper traffic, my heart thudding. Hold on, baby girl. I'm almost there. Every minute felt like an hour. When I finally pulled into her driveway and raced to the front door, it was already slightly ajar. Inside, Emily lay on the couch, her face contorted in pain. Mom, she gasped, something's wrong? We're going to the hospital, Em. You just hang on. I helped her up, practically carrying her to the car. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Emily clutched my hand, her knuckles white, as I speeded through the streets. It's hurting so bad, she whimpered. Stay with me, Em, I urged, my voice shaking. We're almost there. The hospital doors slid open as I yelled for help. Nurses rushed forward, and Emily was quickly taken away on a stretcher. I sprinted after them, refusing to leave her side. Hours blurred into each other as doctors worked on Emily. The delivery was quick, almost urgent, as if the baby knew time was running out. Emily was exhausted but relieved when she finally held her tiny daughter. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, You're safe now. You're going to be okay. I stayed by Emily's side, holding her free hand tightly. Steve didn't come, and I didn't expect him to. His absence spoke volumes about his priorities, or lack thereof. Late into the night, Emily's breathing grew shallow. Mom, she whispered hoarsely. Steve, he's not going to change, is he? I shook my head, tears welling up. No, honey, he's not. Her eyes filled with sadness and determination. Promise me, Mom, keep her safe. File those papers. I promise, Em, I vowed, holding her hand even tighter. The moment Emily was stable enough, I rushed back to her house. Fumbling through the drawer she mentioned, I found the hidden divorce papers. A lump formed in my throat as I saw her signature, the scrawled hope for a future she desperately wanted but couldn't grasp. Returning to the hospital, I checked in on Emily, who lay quietly, her strength waning. Steve and his mother, Susan, were nowhere to be seen. Despite his cruelty, my heart ached for him to at least show some concern for Emily and their child. Hours turned into days, and Emily's condition worsened. Her once bright eyes dimmed, her smile faded. She held the baby weakly, whispering, "You're my light, my little fighter." "Emily," I said softly, holding back my tears, "we're here for you, always." Emily's grip loosened and her eyelids fluttered shut. An eerie calm fell over the room. She never woke up. As I sat there holding her lifeless hand, all I could think about was the promise I made and the revenge that would soon be set in motion. The fire within me grew. Steve and Susan would come, and they would see. As Emily's health declined rapidly, there was a frantic energy in the hospital room. Nurses came in and out, seldom making eye contact. They knew what was looming. Emily held her baby girl, tears falling as she whispered, "Mom, don't let her grow up without love." I squeezed her hand. "She'll have all the love in the world, Em. I promise." Emily's eyes were wide with a mixture of fear and resignation. "What about Steve? What if he tries to take her?" "Don't worry about that now," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll make sure she's safe." Steve finally walked into the room, his face twisted in irritation. "Is this what all the fuss is about?" he sneered. His eyes barely flicked to Emily before settling on the newborn. "I was in an important meeting." Emily's weak voice quivered. "Steve, this is your daughter." Yeah, he muttered dismissively. "I can't stay long. What do you need?" It took everything in me not to snap at him. "Just be here for her," I managed to say. Sure, Steve said, looking at his watch. "But don't expect me to babysit. I'm busy." A nurse walked in with some paperwork. "Mr. Johnson, we need your signature here." Steve scribbled his name without even reading. "Is that it?" Emily tried to speak, but her strength was fading. "Steve." "Listen, Emily," he interrupted. "Try not to make everything so dramatic. I'll sort things out when I get a chance." Without another word, he walked out. Emily's eyes followed him, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "Mom, what if he takes her?" I leaned closer, brushing the hair from her forehead. "He won't. You rest now. I'll take care of everything." Emily's breathing was labored, her voice a mere whisper. "Promise me." "I promise," I said. Emily's eyes closed and she slipped into unconsciousness. Hours later, the beeping slowed, then stopped. The nurses came in and confirmed what I already knew. My daughter's fight was over. After Emily's death, the hospital staff handed me the baby. Holding my granddaughter felt like holding a piece of Emily. As I sat by Emily's bed, I noticed the bruises on her arms again. Proof of the life she endured with Steve. My grip on the hospital gown tightened. Steve had not only failed as a husband, he had also failed as a father, and he would pay for that. I left the hospital room, the baby cooing softly in her sleep. Determination fueled every step I took. I headed straight to the courthouse to file the divorce papers. Emily may be gone, but I wouldn't let Steve tarnish her memory or take away her daughter's future. The following day, I found Emily's hidden journal in her room. As I read her accounts of Steve's neglect and abuse, my anger solidified. Steve's time of reckoning was near, and I'd make sure he felt every ounce of the pain he had inflicted on Emily. Justice for Emily would come, starting at her funeral. The fire of my grief and anger burned hotter, fueling what needed to be done. Emily's funeral loomed, and the preparations were a haunting blur. I kept thinking back to the last thing she asked of me: keep her baby safe. As I combed through her belongings, I almost missed it. A small, leather-bound journal, hidden under some clothes. Opening it, I felt my stomach twist with each harrowing entry. Steve yelled again today because I forgot to buy his favorite cereal. The bruise on my arm hasn't faded yet, and now there's a new one. My hands trembled, rage bubbling under my skin. The entries detailed months of torment, emotional abuse, isolation, and indifference. Steve's calculated cruelty pushed Emily further into a corner, leaving her battered and broken. We were supposed to celebrate our anniversary. Instead, he went to his mother's house. Susan thinks I'm not good enough for him. She doesn't know half of what goes on here, or she doesn't care. Susan's name made my blood boil. She was complicit, if not in action, then in apathy. They were partners in Emily's misery. Emily wrote of Susan's dismissive smirks, her cold shoulder every time Emily sought help, and her blatant favoritism towards Steve. Grief morphed with fury as Emily's words painted a picture of a life entrapped by fear. Yet she never lost hope for her daughter's future. Over the next few days, I clung to that hope as I planned the funeral, determined to make it more than just a farewell. It would be a reckoning. Steve and his vile mother needed to know the gravitas of their actions. On the morning of the funeral, Susan arrived first, her expression a mix of false solemnity and underlying arrogance. "Linda," she said, nodding slightly, "such a tragedy, isn't it?" "More than you know, Susan," I replied coldly. Steve walked in moments later, his face set in an insincere mask of grief that didn't reach his eyes. He ignored the whispers around him, walking straight to me. "Linda, listen." He started. "No, you listen," I cut him off. "You and your mother need to hear what Emily endured. Sit down and shut up." His face contorted with a mix of anger and confusion, but he sat. The air was thick with tension as I stood, holding the journal. I opened to a page, my voice breaking only slightly. Emily wrote, "Mom, if anything happens to me, please take care of my little girl. Keep her away from Steve and Susan. They won't change." A murmur swept through the attendees. Steve's face flushed as Susan looked around nervously. He never cared for her, not in the way a husband should. Emily suffered because of his neglect and abuse, I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. I passed around the photos of Emily's bruises, taken secretly by her in moments of despair. Gasps filled the room, eyes widening in horror. "You will pay for what you've done," I said, staring directly at Steve. "Emily's death is on your hands, and justice will come." Steve tried to stand, his mouth opening to argue, but the weight of the evidence and the glares from the room pinned him down. He knew then, Emily's suffering would not go unanswered. My fight had just begun, and I wouldn't stop until Emily had her justice. At the funeral service, the atmosphere was thick with a mix of sorrow and anger. George stood beside me, his presence a pillar of strength. Our focus was on Emily's memory, but I couldn't ignore the burning desire for justice. Steve and Susan's arrival was like a dark cloud overshadowing the proceedings. They walked in as if they owned the place, their indifference palpable. Steve wore a smug smile that turned my stomach. I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to lash out. As the service concluded, I took a deep breath and approached Steve and Susan. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside me. Steve smirked. "Always something with you, Linda." Ignoring his sarcasm, I continued, "Emily left something for you both. It's important." I led them to a quiet corner of the room, away from the prying eyes of mourners. From my bag, I pulled out the divorce papers and slid them across the table towards Steve. His eyes widened in surprise. "What the hell is this?" he asked, his tone dripping with arrogance. "Emily was filing for divorce," I said bluntly. "She had enough of your abuse." Susan scoffed. "Abuse? Don't be ridiculous. Emily was too sensitive." "Sensitivity had nothing to do with it," I snapped. "These papers were her lifeline, the only proof she had of her decision to leave you." Steve's face darkened. "You think you can blame me for her death?" "You didn't just contribute to her death," I whispered harshly. "You crafted the environment that led to it, and you'll face the consequences." Steve laughed derisively. "You think anyone will believe you?" I pulled out copies of Emily's journal entries and handed them to him. "These are Emily's truths. Bruises, neglect, emotional torment. I have everything documented." Susan paled, her confidence wavering. "This will ruin you, Steve," she whispered. "It's already too late," I said, my voice firm. "Emily also changed her life insurance policy. Your name is off it. The beneficiary is her daughter under my guardianship." Steve's face turned red. "You conniving witch," he spat. "You think you can just take what's mine?" "You took Emily's life," I said coldly. "You will not take her child, and you will not steal her future." In that moment, something shifted. The surrounding mourners began to take notice of our confrontation. Whispers grew louder. Steve's facade cracked under their scrutiny. "You can't do this," Steve hissed through gritted teeth. "I just did," I replied calmly. "And the police will be involved. You abused Emily and neglected her. Everyone will know the truth." The realization of his crumbling image seemed to hit Steve all at once. He staggered back, while Susan's composure shattered. As George joined me, wrapping his arm protectively around my shoulder, I felt a momentary sense of victory. Emily's voice in my heart gave me strength. This was just the beginning, but it was a powerful step towards justice. My promise to Emily would be fulfilled, no matter what. The day of the public memorial service arrived, and the air was electric with tension. The community gathered, whispers rippling through the crowd. Emily's story had touched many hearts, and people came to pay their respects and show support. Steve and Susan entered, their faces set in defiant masks. I took a deep breath and approached the podium. The murmurs quieted as I began. "Thank you all for coming," I started, my voice strong. "We are here to remember Emily, a daughter, a mother, and a friend. But there's more to her story than what you know." I opened Emily's journal, the pages marked with highlights. "These are Emily's words," I said, "words that tell of her suffering at the hands of her husband, Steve." A collective gasp arose from the audience as I read an entry aloud. Steve got angry again. His words cut deeper than any wound. "I live in fear, not just for myself, but for our child." Steve tried to stand, his face a mix of anger and panic. "This is outrageous, lies." "Sit down, Steve," I snapped, my voice resonating with authority. "Let everyone hear what Emily endured." I continued, flipping to another page. "Susan has no sympathy. She belittles me, makes me feel worthless. She enables Steve, and I am trapped in this nightmare." Tears filled many eyes as the weight of Emily's pain settled over the room. George stood by my side, his presence a pillar of strength. "You all knew Emily," I said, holding back my emotions. "You knew her kindness, her love, but few knew the depth of the abuse she suffered. Steve and Susan need to face the consequences of their actions." Gasps of shock and outrage echoed as people began murmuring loudly. The pressure on Steve intensified. A man from the crowd stood. "I'm Emily's neighbor. I heard things. I regret not speaking up. I saw her bruises and her tears." Another voice joined in. "Emily was a good person. She didn't deserve this." Steve's composure finally cracked. "This is a witch hunt," he shouted. "You have no proof." I met his eyes, my gaze unwavering. "We have Emily's word, Steve, and more will come to light. The police are involved. This community won't stand by and let you get away with this." The crowd's murmurs grew into a unified voice of anger and support for Emily. I turned to the podium once more. "Emily asked for justice, not just for herself, but for her daughter. We won't let her down." Someone from the back yelled, "We stand with you, Linda! Justice for Emily!" Steve's face turned a sickly pale as he realized the tide had turned against him. Susan, visibly shaken, clutched her purse as if it were a lifeline. They both slowly retreated from the crowd, the reality of their impending downfall sinking in. As people came forward to offer their condolences and support, I felt a newfound strength. Emily's voice had been heard. This fight wasn't just for her. It was for every person who had endured similar suffering. The public showdown had set the stage for the next battles to come. The police would follow through, and the court would hear Emily's cries for justice. Emily's tragic end would catalyze change, and I would carry on her legacy, fighting for her daughter, her light. The community's outpouring of support at the memorial amplified the tension surrounding Steve and Susan. The weight of their actions bore down, pushing them into public scrutiny. The police followed up swiftly, corroborating Emily's journal entries with neighbors' testimonies. The legal wheels began turning. Court hearings drew closer, and George and I prepared for the battle ahead. The family lawyer, Mr. Harris, was thorough. "We've got enough evidence," he assured us, "but be prepared for a tough fight." The day in court arrived, and the atmosphere was sizzling with unease. I stood with George, holding Emily's journal and photos, my determination renewed. Steve and Susan walked in, flanked by their lawyers, their expressions a mix of defiance and desperation. As the hearing commenced, our lawyer presented the evidence methodically. "Emily Johnson documented her experiences meticulously," Mr. Harris said, gesturing to the journal. "This contains accounts of physical and emotional abuse." Steve's lawyer attempted to undermine Emily's credibility. "These are one-sided entries. There's no corroboration of repeated abuse." But Mr. Harris was prepared. "We have neighbors' testimonies, photos of her injuries, and now this." He signaled to an officer who brought forth a small envelope, a hidden video Emily recorded days before her death. The room held its breath as the video played. Emily's face appeared on screen, her eyes hollow with fear. The conversation between her and Steve was crystal clear. "Steve, stop!" Emily's voice was weak, pleading. "Shut up, Emily," Steve spat back. "You're useless. You're nothing without me." Shocked gasps filled the courtroom. The judge leaned forward, his eyes narrowing at Steve. "Is this your idea of a healthy marriage, Mr. Johnson?" Steve's face turned ashen. It's not what it looks like," he stammered. "It is exactly what it looks like," I said, standing up. "My daughter's cries for help were ignored. She lived in fear and pain because of you." The judge silenced the room, turning his focus to me. "Mrs. Waters, your testimony is crucial here. Please continue." Taking a deep breath, I shared Emily's story. Each word dripped with pain and truth. Emily wanted a safe home for her daughter. Steve's abuse made that impossible. Steve's lawyer objected, but the evidence outweighed his arguments. Susan, seeing the tide turn, whispered urgently to Steve, but her words fell on deaf ears. As the day drew to a close, the judge addressed the court. "Considering the overwhelming evidence, including the video and journal, custody of the child will be granted to Linda and George Waters." He paused, glancing at Steve. "Mr. Johnson, you will face charges of domestic abuse. The law will take its course." A wave of relief washed over me as the gavel came down. Steve's face showed a mix of confusion and fury, but he couldn't escape his fate. The community's support, coupled with the irrefutable evidence, sealed his downfall. Walking out of the courtroom, George squeezed my hand. "You did it, Linda. Emily would be proud." "I just wish she were here to see it," I said, tears welling up. But I knew in my heart our victory was her victory. As Steve and Susan became pariahs, shunned by the very community they had sneered at, we found strength in the collective love and support. Emily's daughter would grow up in the warmth of our family, safe from the shadows of her father's cruelty. Moving forward, we had Emily's spirit guiding us. The battle was hard-fought, but justice prevailed. Emily's light shone through her daughter and in every heart that stood up for her. The fire of grief had turned to a healing force, pushing us beyond the pain and towards a future Emily would have wanted. The aftermath of the court's decision brought swift consequences for Steve and Susan. The community that once turned a blind eye now whispered about their downfall. Steve lost his job, and Susan was iced out by her friends, their true natures exposed to everyone. George and I focused on providing a loving home for Emily's child. The adjustment was challenging. A newborn required relentless attention, but in her, we found a part of Emily still alive. Her bright eyes and soft coos reminded us daily of the fight we had endured. One evening, as we cradled the baby in our living room, George looked at me, his eyes full of determination. "We did it, Linda. We kept our promise to Emily." I nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. "We did, but it won't bring her back." "No, but raising her daughter well will be the best way to honor her memory," George said softly, kissing the baby's forehead. A knock at the door interrupted our quiet moment. It was Mr. Harris, holding a thick envelope. "I thought you'd want to see this," he said, handing it to me. Inside was the court's final ruling and a letter from the detective assigned to Emily's case. They had found more evidence linking Steve to financial exploitation and physical abuse. Steve and Susan were now facing even more severe charges, ensuring they would be out of our lives for good. "I wanted justice," I said, reading the letter. "And we got it." Mr. Harris nodded. "It's not the end, but it's a beginning for healing." The community's support never wavered. Friends and neighbors brought food, offered to babysit, and shared stories of Emily, helping to keep her memory alive. I found solace in their kindness, which countered the darkness Steve and Susan had cast over Emily's life. One sunny afternoon, as George and I strolled through the park with the baby, a woman approached us. "Linda, George," she began, her eyes soft with understanding. "I just wanted to say how brave you both are." "Thank you," I said, feeling a lump in my throat. "Emily would be so proud," she added, gently touching the baby's hand. As she walked away, I felt lighter. Emily's spirit was with us, guiding every step we took. The baby giggled, a sound so pure that it seemed to chase away the lingering shadows of our past struggles. We continued our walk, the sun warming us. "What do you think about naming her?" George asked suddenly. "It feels like it's time." I looked at the baby, thinking of Emily and her strength. "How about Emma?" I suggested. "It's close to Emily and feels right." George smiled. "Emma it is." As we called out her name for the first time, Emma looked up at us, her eyes wide and curious. In that moment, I knew we were on the right path. Emily's legacy would live on, not just in the fight for justice, but in the love we poured into Emma's life. Returning home, I felt a sense of peace. Our family, though broken and rebuilt, was strong. Emily's bravery had set the foundation for a future where Emma would grow up surrounded by love, protected from the cruelty that had claimed her mother. As I rocked Emma to sleep that night, I whispered, "You are safe now. We love you, and we will always protect you." It was a promise not just to Emma but to Emily as well, a promise we intended to keep. The fire that once burned with grief had transformed into a beacon of hope, lighting the way for us to move forward and ensure Emily's spirit thrived through Emma.